as in their communities. The Kennebrew Group provides a magnitude of seminars, programs, and focus on education and Black history. Mr. Kennebrew, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, grew up in Detroit, Michigan, went on to the University of Iowa, where he received his degrees in English literature and African American study. This young man has traveled the globe and giving speeches and presentations on education, economic status, and as well as celebrations as we are here for today. So with no further ado, it is a pleasure and honor to have Mr. Kennebrew with us today, and I offer you our appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I am always somewhat amazed at the introduction that I get sometimes. I'm like, they talking about me? But I've been blessed to be able to travel doing what I love around the world, telling people about the experiences, the contributions, the lives, the importance of people of African descent, not just in the American context, not just in the Western hemisphere, but in the entire world. I am excited. Again, I thank Mr. Ford for having me here, Stacy Brockman, Ms. Bryant, and others that played a part in having me here. I've done several government lectures before for different agencies, Department of Justice in Maine, Department of Agriculture, Health Human Service, DEA, and they actually paid for me to do a Black History program for DEA in Puerto Rico. Man, that was terrible going to Puerto Rico in February. A little bit better than the snow that we have been seeing you guys getting around here in D.C. But let's jump right into this program. But the first thing is, let me tell you, I saw the program, and I was kind of happy because there wasn't a lot of stuff on it, so that means I could talk more a little bit, right? And I didn't see a musical guest on here, so that means I might can sing a little bit on here as well. All right? So what I'd like to do is just open up with the Black National Anthem. I'm going to sing it a little bit different. It goes a little bit like this. Some of you are familiar with it, and it goes, lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoice
celebrations as we are here for today. So with no further ado, it is a pleasure and honor to have Mr. Kennebrew with us today, and I offer you our appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I am always somewhat amazed at the introduction that I get sometimes. I'm like, they talking about me? But I've been blessed to be able to travel doing what I love around the world, telling people about the experiences, the contributions, the lives, the importance of people of African descent, not just in the American context, not just in the Western hemisphere, but in the entire world. I am excited. Again, I thank Mr. Ford for having me here, Stacy Brockman, Ms. Bryant, and others that played a part in having me here. I've done several government lectures before for different agencies, Department of Justice in Maine, Department of Agriculture, Health Human Service, DEA, and they actually paid for me to do a Black History program for DEA in Puerto Rico. Man, that was terrible going to Puerto Rico in February. little bit better than the snow that we have been seeing you guys getting around here in D.C. But let's jump right into this program. But the first thing is, let me tell you, I saw the program, and I was kind of happy because there wasn't a lot of stuff on it, so that means I could talk more a little bit, right? And I didn't see a musical guest on here, so that means I might can sing a little bit on here as well. All right? So what I'd like to do is just open up with the Black National Anthem. I'm going to sing it a little bit different. It goes a little bit like this. Some of you are familiar with it, and it goes, lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicings rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the hope that our dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the faith the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. All right. My tip jar is up here at the front, so if you want to put some donations. But this program is important to me. I'm glad Asala came up with this particular theme, talking about black economic empowerment. We know how important money is, okay? It's written that money is a defense, okay, that it is a fence against all things. So we have I'll call this a secret person, a mystery person on the front here. The program is called Paid in Full, The History of Black Economic Empowerment. And we're going to find out who that person is. Some of you may recognize that oil representation of a person, but she's very important to black economic empowerment, I'll have you know. But we're going to move on to the next slide. All right. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do is I just didn't want to talk about black economic empowerment in America. Now, there's a problem with historiography and the understanding of history, the way that it's taught and the way that it's learned, that it seems like we don't want to make any type of connection to black people in Africa or in other places of the world, like there is no connection. Well, many historians and scientists and anthropologists will tell you that it definitely is. So I want to start our discussion in the Eastern Hemisphere talking about the Empire of Mali. There were several great empires that existed before slavery. Black people didn't just come along at slavery. When the ships came, boop, they just popped up on the scene. Okay? That was, you guys can loosen up a little bit. Some of that stuff I'm saying is kind of funny, okay? All right, y'all loosen up. All right? And I'm not going to jump off the stage and bite you, all right? Unless you put something in the tip. No, I'm just kidding. But the Empire of Mali, along with on the western coast, Songhai, also Ghana, was an incredible empire of learning, where people came from actually the different parts of Europe into these centers. You'll see Guinea and also Timbuktu. If you ever heard the saying, I don't know, we drove out to Timbuktu trying to say that it's a far place away, but Timbuktu was a university, a center of higher learning in the Empire of Mali. I'm going to tell you why it was so important. One of the last great empires, there was an empire on the eastern coast called Great Zimbabwe, also some empires that predate slavery. So we're talking about anywhere from 600 AD all the way up into the 1600s, 1700s, and all of that changed for reasons that we know. But the empire of Mali was great and one of the natural resources that is continuing to go up and up and up. And if you can convert some of your greenbacks to gold, you will be better off for it. But it was rich in gold. Now, I want to talk about, as we talk about economic empowerment and the ability to influence people and regions with money, it's this one king in particular in the empire of Mali. His name was Mansa Musa. Sometimes you'll hear Mansa Khan Musa or what have you. And he did something that all Muslim people seek to do on occasion. He went in 1324 AD to his Hajj to Mecca. Now, this was this wasn't him getting in the sedan with a couple of his friends and driving from the eastern coast of the continent of Africa all the way to the eastern part, all the way through the Middle East going to Mecca. This was a caravan of somewhere around 60,000 people. Now, this is before Greyhound. This is before Amtrak. This is before AirTran that almost made me late and missed this lecture. I'm not going to tell y'all about that. I was running in the airport last night trying to get to my connecting flight. We're not going to worry about that. But it's before all those different modes of transportation. So these people walked. This was a months and months journey. So 60,000 people, which had to be fed, 60,000 men. And the journey took several months, but every Friday, in every place that they stopped, they built a mosque. And, of course, it wasn't free. But the economic part, the part where you show the influence of how to control with money, is that they had 80 camels laden with 50 to 300 pounds of gold. So we know that's somewhere around the minimum of 4,000 pounds of gold. Now, what's so important and so incredible about that is that on his way through Egypt, they gave away so much gold. And that's why it says charity. They gave away so much gold, it made the prices of different products rise. Say, for instance, Bill Gates, he comes to Washington, D.C., and he gives out so much money that the price of milk goes up from $3 a gallon, we wish, to $5 or $7 or $8 a gallon because he gave up so much money. And when he realized that because of what he did, his charity of giving out so much gold, guess what he did? He went back through Egypt and started to purchase products at the high prices, and what it did was bring back down the price of the commodities. So he gave out so much gold, brought prices up, then he spent so much gold buying stuff and brought prices back down. So you're really talking about an individual who had a lot of influence. Now, this is a little scene where it talks about them, a scene of where they're on their Hajj. Now, I got good news and I got bad news. All right? We know what the transatlantic slave trade was. We know that ships came from the north from Europe, come down to the south, take Africans from the coastal regions who at some point were either lived on their coastal regions or who walked thousands, hundreds of miles at least to the coast. Now, I want you to take a look at this picture, all right? The people who got their head down looking sad, and then there are the other folks. But there's something that we have to talk about. We're talking about economic empowerment. And understand that what slavery was about. Slavery wasn't just about being mean. Slavery was about making some money. One enslaved African boy was able to pay the slave ship captain's salary for an entire year. All right? And you're talking about 9 million plus, 9 to 12 million people that survived the Middle Passage, of which anywhere between 50 to 75% may have died in the Middle Passage because of the difficulty. Because on the ships, it got up to 134 degrees. Because on the ships, people were stacked in like sardines. where you had shelves just like you did have in your kitchen, where people were packed in there head to toe, head to toe, head to toe, packed in two different ways. One way was called a loose pack. One way was called a tight pack on those shelves. A loose pack is when you were packed on the shelf and you got a chance to lay on your back. But a tight pack is when they rolled you on your side. Okay? Ships were packed with anywhere between 70 upwards to 600 to 700 people, of which many, half to 75% to a great deal number of people died and were perished. But take a look at this as we're talking about money at this particular picture. Take a look at this other picture. Okay? Again, good news and bad news. There's something that you have to know about the success and the reason why the transatlantic slave trade was successful. The reason why the transatlantic slave trade was successful is because African people helped. Now, a hush comes over the room, even quieter than the hush that was already there, all right? Imagine someone who has never come to your house before trying to navigate around your house in the dark. They can't do it. But you know you can get up in the middle of the night, half sleep, and navigate all the way to the bathroom and don't stub your toe, but only once a week, right? So think then at the idea that European people who did not have experience with the interior of the continent of Africa, who would give them that experience? They couldn't go to a mobile gas station and get a map. They couldn't take out their phone and look at their GPS coordinates. It didn't exist. African people helped, okay? Small franchises and great, like the Ashanti Nation. Some of the bigger nations that already had some type of indentured servitude type slavery, the people that they were capturing in the wars that they would fight, they would sell them to the white people that would come, and then they would get these different products, commodities, that they hadn't seen and hadn't had before. Bars of gold or bars of iron, beads, coins, guns, clothes, and rum. Okay? Now imagine rum introduced to people for the first time who never had rum. Now that's a happy hour, right? Okay? Also think about as well how if you had a village of 500 and the Ashanti Nation had a village of 25,000, but your little nation is now participating in the slave trade with the Europeans and you get guns for the first time. It changed the power dynamics on the continent of Africa. If you got 500 men with guns against 25,000 people with spears, those guns going to win out, all right? And that's what happened. And this is my disclaimer for this. When I was doing the research for this and I was reading this, and I saw the glee almost that some of the authors were writing in regards to talking about this, black people helped too. So it made slavery wasn't as bad. No, I'm not trying to take anybody off the hook. I'm trying to add some more people on the hook, okay? And those were African people that participated as well. Now, we're talking about in the Eastern Hemisphere, before they got onto the ships. But take a look at some of the things that they received. Those are the bars of gold, and those are the cowrie shells, okay? Seemingly very valuable, okay? But now, this really blew my mind because until I did the research for this particular program, I didn't really know this history. There were black slave owners. Okay, now, I'll go through and I'll explain. Now, this one guy that's shown here, he was never a slave owner, but he was an overseer. And his name is Thomas L. Johnson, and he wrote a book called 28 Years of Slavery. Now, there's a book called Free Black Slave Owners, and it talks about slave owners who were of African descent who lived in South Carolina. Now, here is the problem with that information. Now, just like you go down to the DMV and you register your car, they have records of people of African descent purchasing and selling people, black people. But some of them, like Harriet Tubman, after she ran away, purchased, well, she didn't actually purchase, she just took them and they ran, right? But some free, we not purchasing, we ain't got no money. We're not doing that. We run it, right? What they did was to, you cannot tell in the record if the people were purchased in a benevolent fashion to have them set free, or if they were purchased for the fact of being enslaved. Now, we do know that a gentleman named Richard Holley and a lot of others that they talk about in the Free Black Slave Owners book by Larry Koger, he talks about how Richard Holloway, he purchases one of his relatives and sets him free. But then it also says that he buys 3 more people, a young woman and 2 children, for $545 apiece. And for whatever reason, he don't set them free. He sells them for $975 apiece. Now, we can extrapolate why he did that. It seems like to make some money because he didn't set them free. All right? Now, that's what the records show. And we can only think or find out how many times that has occurred. But that was one of the things that really blew my mind. But let me say this before I move on to the next slide. There were, as you talk about economic empowerment, and you talk about this idea of having money, being paid in full, as the term says, is that there were some free blacks, free people of African ancestry who lived in America, who lived on the eastern coast, who did have property, who did own property, who did build on that property, who did become very wealthy. But because of jealousy, because of envy, a lot of times when you saw a free black person start to rise in wealth and stature in a community, people would come to take their possessions. So while they had this title of being free, a lot of times their property was taken, confiscated, and on many occasions they were killed. Okay? Now, let's jump up from the slave trade to discussing what Asala wanted us to talk about to some degree, and that's the Urban League. It started in 1910 as the Committee on Urban Conditions Among Negroes, 1910. And the reason why it started was to assist blacks, African Americans who were moving from the South, where the majority of African Americans were at that time, coming up to the North. Because industrialists like Henry Ford, me being from the Detroit area, Carnegie and other of the folks that had the large factories, in particular Ford, they were, African Americans were making around $25 a day, okay, working in the fields as sharecroppers and things of that nature. But Henry Ford was offering $5 a day. So you're talking about 20 times more money than you make. Now imagine, would you move to another part of the country if somebody offered you 20 times your salary? Right? Don't everybody run out at the same time now, okay? But that's what happened. So to help those who were moving from the rural experience to the urban experience, the Urban League came into play. And one of their mission statements says to enable African Americans to secure economic self-reliance, parity, power, and civil rights. Okay? The president of the Urban League now is Mark Morial. Past presidents were Whitney Young. I can't remember anymore. All right? It happens. So let's move on to the next slide. Now, if you move to Tulsa, Oklahoma, there was an area where many of us have read about, learned about, studied about, called the Black Wall Street. Now, the name alone will let you know that people had lots of money. Started really by one gentleman who came, and there was nothing in that part of town. It was called Greenwood. And what occurred was he started these businesses that became to flourish, and as individuals started to migrate, because that migration period, the black migration or black exodus, starts anywhere from 1905 to 1910 and goes all the way up to the end of World War II in the 1940s. So you had people who were leaving from the Louisiana area, the Texas area, the Georgia, Mississippi area, Alabama, and coming, if they weren't coming straight up to Chicago, or if they weren't veering off this way and coming to D.C., Philly, right? Then they were going off to the west to places like Chicago, and then even further west to places like Oklahoma. And when they found this thriving place, they had doctors, lawyers, educators, pharmacists, everything you needed. They were happy and stayed. Now, this discussion is a pre-integration discussion of how African American communities were self-sufficient. Okay? Now, you had several black millionaires, but something happened. It seemed like the white folks that were in Tulsa, Oklahoma, got upset because the black folks had money. So an event occurred when an African-American man was about to get on the elevator that was, I'll say, conducted. Remember elevator operators? She was the elevator operator, and the story is that he tripped. And to keep himself from falling, he grabbed her arm. I heard folks go, mm-hmm. Exactly. She screamed. You know the brother was gone. He ran. So he's captured, put in jail. A lynch mob comes to the jail. Now, this is what happened that made the lynch mob come. In the newspaper, they didn't put African-American man or Negro man assaults white woman. They put Negro man sexually assaults white woman. So outside the jail, you have 10,000 people about to take this brother out and to lynch him. And understand, in between this period around the 1920s and right after Reconstruction around the 1870s, that a black person was lynched on average about 3 a week for 40 to 50 straight years of reported lynchings. You want to check that out? A book called Without Sanctuary, Lynching Photography in America, will blow your mind. How people put lynching scenes on postcards and sent them around the country. Okay? But a blacks from Greenwood section of Tulsa came out to protect the brother. They had guns. The white had guns. Somebody started busting caps. Someone started firing their pistols. I want to make this culturally friendly, right? All right. And what happened was this incredible scene of devastation in 1921, the Tulsa, Oklahoma race riots, where streams of hundreds and thousands of men just rushed to the Greenwood side of Tulsa and killed, robbed, and looted the area to the extent where the one gentleman who had like $5 billion, who was a multimillionaire, lost $200,000 in one day, became broke. And then all of a sudden in the court, the county court of deeds office, that the police chief buys land in Tulsa, in the Greenwood side of Tulsa, Oklahoma, the fire chief, all of the other different type of officials in the county deeds office, it records that they started buying land on that side in Tulsa. Even so much, the looting was so bad and the riot was so bad. People got in crop dusting planes and dropped bombs on the black side of town. Imagine in America, from the sky, okay, people having bombs dropped on them. Okay? Now, Let's move up. Because I'm from Detroit, Michigan, you have to start talking about African Americans gaining economic power in the entertainment industry. And this is one of the first. I'm not going to say he's the first. I'm going to say one of the first. This is Barry Gordy in front of Hitsville in Detroit on West Grand Boulevard, who I've had the opportunity to visit. Was a jazz aficionado, but couldn't make a lot of money in jazz. So he said, let me design. It wasn't just on the singing, but it was the presentation. Let me design people who have talent, a presentation that during this civil rights period, because this is 1957 that he started Motown. Remember, Brown versus Board of Education had just happened. The death of Emmett Till had just happened. The Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott had just happened. Okay? Just coming after this start, we're going to have James Meredith integrating University down south. We're going to have the Greensboro guys doing what they did in 1960. You have all these things. You have Ruby Bridges around this time. Okay? So the country is in an uproar. So he says, what can I present that people will gravitate to? So these singers, and this music just didn't impact black people. It impacted everybody. Because if I was to sing, I guess you say, what can make me feel this way? All right? Still with us today. All right? So very important. And this guy was really the progenitor to some of the hip-hop moguls, the Sean Puffy Combs, the people, the 50 Cent, the hip-hop guys who have started their own music companies and have gotten extremely, extremely rich. Okay? Let's move on. Now, this is the post-integration discussion of how African Americans, for a large degree. Now, I didn't put down all the black mayors, so don't get mad at me if the mayor of Tougaloosa, Mississippi was black and I didn't put him on here. Don't get mad. I know that's your hometown, okay? But you had individuals like Carl Stokes in Cleveland, Richard Hatcher in Gary, Walter Washington in Washington, D.C. was appointed in 67, elected in 75, Tom Bradley in Los Angeles in 73, Maynard Jackson in Atlanta in 73, Coleman Young in Detroit in 73, Harold Washington in Chicago in 83. Just think about 73 alone, how many African-American mayors were elected to big cities in our country. What did that do? This is what it did. It allowed professional. It helped rank and file, middle class black folks, but it helped professional lawyers, accountants, other different professionals to get work and contracts that they had never gotten, that they were pretty much excluded from. One particular place called Lewis, White, and Clay in Detroit, when I was in college, I had an opportunity to work at. Now become the largest owned and operated black law firm in the country, now called Lewis and Monday. Okay? So if you have any legal problems in Detroit, I'm just kidding. But the black mayors were so influential in how it is that blacks got a lot of economic power. Now, we have to move to this individual who is so important. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of this guy, Reginald Lewis. Just to say it plainly, Reginald Lewis was bad. Okay? Born in Baltimore, Maryland, went to Virginia State on a football scholarship. He worked as a lawyer for 15 years. Then he did something, and it's called ownership. If you are looking to make money, don't work there, own there. That's the principle. That's the thing that you have to understand, that if you want to make a whole lot of money, you have to be the the owner. A lot of risk, but a lot of opportunity for growth. He started a TLC, a venture capital corporation. 1987, he did something very interesting. He purchased TLC, it was called Beatrice something or other, and then he changed the name to TLC Beatrice International. It was the first billion-dollar black-owned operated business. Now, this is a time where BT existed, but it wasn't as big and influential as Reginald Lewis. And look at the title to this book that I saw. It was really interesting. Why should white guys have all the fun? You can laugh there, I guess. All right. All right. How Reginald Lewis created a billion-dollar business empire. All right. He's the progenitor to all of those guys who are like CEOs of major companies now, who are the chief executive officers and owners of these huge either business or entertainment or these type of entities now. All right. You see a guy like Jay-Z, who started off rapping, now owns clothing lines, fragrances, own record company, signed a $200, $300 million deal just by rapping. All right. I need to start, I don't know, I think I might have missed that calling, all right? But Reginald Lewis was very influential. But here, this is our mystery girl. And there's no way that you can talk about black economic empowerment in this country without talking about this young lady who is But I also forgot somebody from history that we have to talk about. I have to. So I have to do them together. I know y'all sitting out there. How that boy gonna come here and talk about black economic power and don't talk about Madam C.J. Walker? I'm gonna tell Mr. Ford about that. I'm gonna write on that little green sheet that he ain't know. Madam C.J. Walker, Oprah and the Madam. All right. Madam C.J. Walker and Oprah are both very interesting to me as you look at their lives. Both had difficulty in the beginning of their lives. Madam C.J. Walker, born Sarah Breedlove. She was married with child and divorced. Not divorced, but widowed by the time she was 15 years old. Oprah is very open about the sexual abuse that occurred in her life. Now listen at these two stories. Madam C.J. Walker, and she did not create the pressing comb. Don't say that no more. It was Sarah Boone that created the pressing comb. She created hair care products. Now at the turn of the century, Madam C.J. Walker, like other African-American women, because of bad diets, because of bad having no hair care products, their hair was falling out. And a black woman, their hair, that's a problem. All right? I can say a lot right there, but I'm going to keep on going. I want to make it out of here, right? But Madam C.J. Walker, she said she had a dream that a man came to her and told her that if you put these products together, if you mix them like this, and then when you put them in the hair, if you brush the hair continuously, now we know that brushing your hair stimulates the scalp and makes the hair grow. Along with the hair care products, she did something very interesting. She started her own company. And what did she do? What vacuum cleaner salesmen do today? What Avon does today? Amway? All of these different, I'm not going to say anything, but she got agents that went all across the United States and the Caribbean selling their product. She would allow them to pinch off a little bit of the proceeds, and then she brought some back for her. And that's how it is that she became a millionaire. First woman, self-made millionaire, black or white, Madam C.J. Walker. and was an incredible philanthropist along with her daughter, Azalea Hackley. Okay? So then we move over to Oprah, who not many people know skipped 2 grades in school. All right? She goes on to college, and the story, the gist of the story is when she is in Chicago, she takes this show. It's a morning show that's 30 minutes long, and that's the worst rated in the market. By whatever the testament, she turns it into an hour show, and it becomes the #1 rated show in the market. Now, this is what's incredible to me, that I cannot find the information to tell me how this has occurred. I can pretty much guess, but it says in 1983 that she gained control of her show. Now, I don't know how she did that. Most likely she said, either I get control of this show or I'm leaving this station. Most likely that's how it happened. But she gained control of the show. We know about Harpo production studio. And this is what blows my mind. As you're talking about how Madam C.J. Walker had people selling for her, and she made money from the different purchases and selling power of her agents. Listen to how much money Oprah made in one day. She had the control of her show. She goes to what's called the syndication conference. Well, you will have this big auditorium, a big conference hall, where there will be different shows that are locally produced around in this auditorium, and different representatives, agents, from different markets, say from like 3 or 4 people, television stations from D.C. ago, from Detroit ago, from Philly ago, from all around the country, and they'll go and say, well, you know what? We would love to have your show on our station. We'll give you, basically, I don't know if she gave the price or they gave the price, but it was pretty much like, oh, we'll give you $25,000 an episode. So you're talking about 40 episodes a season, 30 episodes a season. So you're talking about $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 from one station. And then you're talking about she's on 150 plus stations. So in one day, at the syndication conference, she made $300 million because she owned it. That's the key to economic empowerment. It's ownership, not working yourself like a dog. I'm not going to say, raise your hand if you know something about that, because your boss might be in here. I want you to keep your job, right? But that's the key. I never knew that people would give other people money to go around and speak about black history. Who would have thunk it? Now I have DVDs, CDs, of some which I have with me today. Can't sell them in here. Have to go out in the snow and buy them, right? But I decided that I want to become an owner because I looked at history and I said, what is the story that history is trying to tell? And it's trying to tell me that people, when they desired to change their economic stance, position in the world, they went into ownership. So if that is a bump or the end of the story, that's what it is for economic empowerment. So what I want to leave you with is a song, and I want to leave you with one slide, and it shows a little bit of my black history. I heard somebody say, oh my God. Who said that? Who said that? It ain't that bad, my goodness. This is my contact information. This is my company's number and my email address that you can reach me at. And my email address is www.bcbconnect www.thekennybrewgroup.com. But I want to leave you with this song. And you know how African Americans in the experience of slavery sang Negro spirituals to transmit songs and meanings. And this is one song called I'm Building Me a Home. And it talks about preparing for later. So what I want to leave you with, and I'm not talking about a mad exodus from ATF. Okay? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about to change in your life. If you want to do that, become an owner and create something for yourself. And this song goes like this. It's a Negro spiritual. I'm building me a home. I'm building me a home. This earthly house is gonna soon decay. And my soul's gotta have, oh Lord, somewhere to stay. When you hear me shouting, I'm building me a home. When you hear me shouting, I'm building me a home. This earthly house is gonna soon decay. And my soul's gotta have, and my soul's gotta have somewhere to stay. My name is Royce Kennybrew. Thank you. Thank you.